We are assembled here today to pay final respects to our honored dead. And yet it should be noted that in the midst of our sorrow, this death takes place in the shadow of new life, the sunrise of a new world, a world that our beloved comrade gave his life to protect and nourish. He did not feel this sacrifice a vain or empty one, and we will not debate his profound wisdom at these proceedings. Of my friend, I can only say this. Of all the souls I have encountered in my travels, his was the most human. Others? Huh?
Ladies and gentlemen of the universe, the next voice you hear.
It's Erik Nagel.
Yes, that it is. It is Erik Nagel, and that is me. 866-969-1969 is the phone number to get in touch with us here on the program. Joining me each and every week, as always, is my co-host, Matt O.G.
Hello, sir.
How are you?
I am lovely, mostly, sort of, thank you.
I'll take that as good.
Well, it's kind of a sad day.
It is a very sad day. The passing of Leonard Nimoy, obviously, we're going to talk about that. We're going to touch on that a little bit.
For those that don't know, he was Galvatron in the Transformers movie.
Right, yes. He was also known for countless appearances on The Simpsons.
That's right.
Then he had this Star Trek thing going on.
Right, he had
and
that
then
like a couple times,
he had
right?
books and songs.
Sure.
And he seemed to be voicing over a lot of solar system specials on the Discovery Science Channel.
And finding
He seemed to be voicing over a lot of solar system specials on the Discovery Science Channel.
And finding Bigfoot, I believe, at one point in time.
At one point in time as well. He was a man who wore many hats.
Sure.
So we will talk about him and his passing that happened today. We're supposed to get a phone call in a few minutes from Al Jean. He's the showrunner of The Simpsons.
Nice.
He was nice enough to call in over the summer for the launch of the FXX network and their marathon, plus promoting The Simpsons live at the Hollywood Bowl. So I spoke to him today, so hopefully he's going to call in a little bit and we can talk about Mr. Nimoy and his involvement on The Simpsons. Everyone's going for, obviously, the Star Trek stuff. And you and I were discussing on the way in that it's a little rough for the people that knew him best, William Shatner, George Takei,
sure.
and whoever else is still alive from the original Star Trek crew there, that now they're going to be bombarded by every news media, every entertainment organization to talk about this, and it just happened, so it's a little difficult. So it's going to be hard to get these people to pretty much open up right. It will in time. But I figured I'd go a different route for people who worked with him in a different capacity that you didn't get to really hear about. So hopefully, I think that's him calling in just a moment. I think that's him calling. Yeah, all right. So we'll get to that in just a second.
Nice.
Also on the program today, we're going to talk to comedy writer, TV producer, and co-host of the Amazing Colossal podcast with Gilbert Gottfried, Mr. Frank Santopadre is here. We will talk to him. And our old pal, Lisa Corrao, is here again. Hi, Lisa.
Hello.
How are you?
You've got old pal status. That's nice.
Yes.
Old
pal. Recurring character now. And Giddles is here as well.
Hey, what's up?
Sulking behind the computer like, I want to be his old pal.
I wish.
I think he's on the phone here. Let's go to Mr. Al Jean. Al, how are you?
I'm good.
Thank you for calling in, sir. I reached out to him earlier today, and he was nice enough to accept our invitation here. Of course, I want to talk to you about the passing of Leonard Nimoy today. Leonard Nimoy did a lot for The Simpsons. In fact, he's probably, not probably, he is on one, could be one of the most famous episodes in Simpsons history, the monorail.
He is, and one of the nicest people I ever met, and it's so amazing when you get to meet someone who is a hero from your childhood, like Stan Lee or him, and they're just what you wanted them to be.
How did this come about, getting Leonard Nimoy on The Simpsons? Now, the monorail, I think, was like the third or fourth season, so it was just when The Simpsons were starting to hit its stride, and there wasn't a whole bunch of celebrity appearances on the show yet. How did it come getting Leonard Nimoy a part of this?
Well, we'd actually gone to George Takei first because he had been in season 2 and was really funny.
Fugu.
And he turned us down. It turned out he is on the board of directors of several monorails and didn't want to be associated with a show that depicted monorails.
Did you know this going in?
Something that funny? No, I didn't know the monorail lobby was so powerful. I was all of this.
Because I
thought they had a one-track mind.
I would have thought that if you're doing the whole monorail concept and thinking like who's involved with the monorail industry, oh, Leonard Nimoy is, let's reach out to him. But it just happened that he really did do something for the monorail industry.
And originally when Conan was writing the script, we were talking about, well, maybe Leonard Nimoy, and I always thought he'll never do our show. He's so unapproachable. And we asked him, and to our surprise and delight, he said yes. And he came, and we would say, can you say the cosmic ballet goes on? And he'd go, the cosmic ballet goes on.
Does anyone want to switch seats? That was one of the best lines in that whole episode.
It was so funny. I mean, him, doing it, and he had such great sense of humor about himself. And so we asked him back for our X-Files parody, the Springfield Files, and we asked if he would sing, and he goes, you're trying to get me old horse voice to sing, aren't you? Well, yeah, maybe there's a little bit of a sense of humor in this. And he then started, good morning, starshine. And it was great. He was just such a great sense of humor about himself. So nice, so funny, and so great as an actor. It really will be missed.
Outside of working on these episodes, from meeting him, obviously, from The Simpsons, did you have any, or you or the rest of the crew have any kind of personal interaction with him?
I didn't meet him other than that, but he did 2 episodes of Futurama, and Matt had seen him a couple times more. Always a gentleman, always great. You can hear the love of the other Enterprise, crew members for him when they talk about him. Just a terrific guy.
For those who don't know or aren't familiar with Futurama, it was a spin-off for The Simpsons. It started its own universe. And when celebrities usually appeared, they appeared, because the show is based, again, in the future, they appeared as their original selves, but their head was in a jar.
Heads in jars.
Yes, it was a little... Cottesland, yes, his head was in a jar. Nixon's head was in a jar. They didn't get the real Nixon, of course. Not such a nice guy. But, yeah, and so he was on 2 episodes, I believe, of Futurama as well.
So this guy, everybody knows him from Star Trek. Today, in the scurry of trying to get things done around here and other broadcast outlets, I think one of the news organizations played his Bilbo Baggins song. I was like, really? And networks are really good at having death montages ready to go at a moment's notice of every celebrity, political figure, athlete, etc. And they showed a photo, they played a clip from Star Trek that they talked over, and then you heard the Bilbo Baggins theme. I was like, that is a horrible way to pay tribute to one of the most popular celebrities in American culture.
But I would say, who else is at the nexus of Star Trek, The Simpsons, and Lord of the Rings? I mean, that is a nerdgasm of epic proportions.
That is
very true.
And he even got his own figure out of it, too, outside of Star Trek. There's a Simpsons Leonard Nimoy figure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well,
I can't say enough good things about him, and a total fan.
Are they usually when somebody has appeared on the show? I know a lot of these episodes are done so far in advance, but are they going to do some kind of like tribute slate to him in a future episode?
We're going to have a small tribute card to him on this Sunday's episode. Yeah.
That's great.
Just a brief still from the show, from the Monorail show.
All right, we'll check that out. The Simpsons, the new episodes of The Simpsons on Sunday nights, 8 p.m. on Fox. Look
Nice.
for that. Al Jean, thank you so much for calling in and talking about your time with Leonard Nimoy. Was there any other stories that maybe you could share with us?
That's it. What you thought was what you got. He was a great guy.
Who knew he was part of the monorail industry and had a problem with an episode making fun of the monorail?
Well, you know, the monorail industry is a lot more insidious than you think. Somebody should do a documentary.
Jeez. Him and Walt Disney.
Mr. Jean, thank you so much. You're Al Jean on Twitter. Give him a follow. And, of course, Simpsons on Sunday nights, 8 p.m., brand new episodes, at least for a couple more years. They're holding steady here. And, of course, all the marathons that go over really well. And you do live tweet the marathons time to time that happen on FXX.
We do, and live tweet episodes when the new one's there. And, you know, it's a great... There's so many great things about it. And besides meeting great people, the other thing is on Twitter, you just get to connect with fans in a way that I never had before. And people love the show and you know it better than I do, and it's really gratifying.
One of the funnier things that Al does when the marathons are on, he'll give you little behind the scenes things as far as production or how things were scripted, but then he likes to explain all the difficulties that they had and go, I don't know why we even bothered with this in the first place. It's like such a letdown.
That'll be what's on my tombstone.
It's pulling back the curtain. He's sharing.
Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Jean. I know it's Friday, it's the weekend. It's an unfortunate situation with what happened to Leonard Nimoy, but thank you for calling in and sharing some stories with us. We do appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Take care, man.
Bye-bye.
Al Jean on Twitter, Jean, not Gene.
Right.
So follow him there. So, yes, Leonard Nimoy has passed.
He has.
It's very sad.
It is.
And I'm sure all weekend we're going to see, like, one of the channels will probably do a Star Trek marathon and all that stuff coming in. It happened at the end of a news cycle.
Right,
you know?
yeah.
So, I don't know. It's just sad.
I suspect you'll see things probably throughout the course of the entire week because
I'd like to see new things pop up, like documentaries or behind-the-scenes stuff that he didn't, like, that wasn't put out there into the public, but now they have the footage laying around.
Yeah, I mean, I guess whoever has the rights to that stuff is going to have to...
So like stuff that was way too embarrassed to be released while he was alive, Eric?
Or really boring. Like, he just sat there for 2 hours, did nothing. Here it is.
Well, he wrote...
Repackaged.
Didn't he have two different autobiographies that he put out? So I think most of the stuff is, at least from his perspective, or that he wanted out there, was out already. So,
well, according to The Simpsons, there was 3, because one was called I'm Not Spock.
Right.
And then the second one is I Am Spock. And the third one was I'm Also Scotty, and he's fat and eating a sandwich. So
I loved that he, in the new Star Trek movies, he could play old Spock great.
Yeah.
Like William Shatner couldn't play old Captain Kirk.
No.
It would just look weird.
I was also
I
telling...
think he'd play a caricature of it almost. He'd get stuck. William Shatner would get stuck in the caricature of what Kirk has become. Nimoy was able to still recapture that character.
Yeah, he was still Spock in the Star
Right.
Trek movie. He wasn't someone being Spock.
Right.
I was telling Matt on the way in as well that you should check out the Robot Chicken episode where they reenacted the Spock meeting Spock from the new Star Trek series. Movie, where old Spock meets young Spock. But then every 30 seconds, a new Spock showed up. And he's like, I'm Spock from 2 hours from now, and I don't really have anything to say. And this is, I'm Spock who turned into a woman. And like, they opened up all the parallel universes, and then it collapsed on itself, and then everyone died. It's a good sketch. You should check it out.
Robot Chicken, always a good time.
So let's move on from that. Lisa Corrao is in here, and let's say hello to Frank Santopadre. Frank.
Hello, Eric. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming in. I'm really excited about this.
I appreciate it. No one's talking about Leonard Nimoy's time on Mission Impossible. Does anybody remember that?
We're probably a little too young for that demo.
Hurt, Eric.
But you're talking the one with Tom Cruise. I don't remember Spock in that.
Yes.
Was he grappling from a building?
I think my favorite moment of that Simpsons episode is when Mayor Quimby thinks he's one of the little rascals.
Oh, right, yeah.
Remember that bit?
Frank is a co-host of the Amazing Colossal podcast, which he does with Gilbert Gottfried. And I've been talking about this podcast for a long time here. It's a show that focuses on a lot of old Hollywood. Now, by today's standards, that would mean, you know, actors from the 70s and 80s. Right. But they're talking about the golden age of Hollywood all the way up until about the 80s. You focus on a lot of Groucho Marx and the Marx Brothers. The Stooges is another go-to for you guys. And then random TV characters and character actors. You just had what's his name? Karen.
James Karen.
James Karen on the show.
Karen. Yeah.
And I'm listening to the interview, and the voice is familiar, and I'm starting to hear the projects. I'm like, okay, and I'm still not placing him. And then while I'm listening to the episode, I go and Google him. And for those in the Northeast area here, he was the Pathmark guy. He was the guy that did all the ads telling you about what was in the circular for Pathmark. But meanwhile, he's a famous character actor, and he's been in almost everything.
Poltergeist,
right?
Return of the Living Dead, a million television shows. He's been working nonstop since the 40s.
Oh my God!
Wow.
Good
Yeah,
on him.
it's impressive. He's 92 and still working.
Wow.
So that's the kind of stuff we like to drill down and get obscure.
You guys research everything. Either you know all this, or you have really good have a really good staff for research.
I'm a lonely
on this.
man, Eric.
You have a lot
I
to do.
a lot of research. Gilbert doesn't do a lot of research.
No, Gilbert likes to ask how long is their dick.
There's a lot of that. Somebody said it's an interesting podcast because Gilbert's doing the Howard Stern show and you're doing the Charlie Rose show, and it's kind of a clash of styles. But we're both obsessed with that stuff, so it's fun research. Some of it I already know, and a lot of it is just the kind of stuff that we're passionate about, and we created it on a lark, to do it at his kitchen table, never thinking that anybody else was going to listen to it.
Right.
And when iTunes just named us one of the podcasts of the year, I mean, we were thrilled. We didn't expect any of this, actually.
And you only just started, beginning of the summer? Yeah.
In June. We started with Dick Cavett, and we've done Roger Corman, we've had Henry Winkler, we've had Weird Al, Adam West.
Roger Corman is the host on...
He's the father of the B movie, Roger Corman.
Roger Corman's Fantastic Four.
Yeah,
yes, so many movies. Go to his IMDb page. You'll lose about 2 hours.
I'm getting this messed up. Who is the gentleman that hosts the old movies on?
Robert Osborne.
Robert Osborne.
We had him as well.
Yeah,
we had him as well.
That was an interesting episode where this gentleman hosts all these old kind of movies. Is it on TNT or TBS?
Turner Classic Movies.
It's one of the Turner channels. And it's sort of what Gilbert used to do with USA Up All Night back in the day.
Yeah.
But Gilbert would host like horrible either B movies or those skiing co-ed movies from the 80s where he had to do all the cuts in the middle when they'd go to and from break and whatnot. And if anybody remembers USA Up All Night, Gilbert was Saturday night and Rhonda Shear was Friday night.
That's right.
So when Gilbert started doing Saturday night, there was a lot of complaints that you weren't seeing the big boobed blonde hosting these movies, but Gilbert handled it way better than Rhonda Shear did.
He'll appreciate that you're bringing this up. A lot of people have forgotten about Up All Night.
I loved Up All Night because it was the when you were that young, it was the closest thing to getting to see an adult movie with some nudity. Like USA would get it right to the point, and then it would cut away to something else.
Well, you're a purist. Do you remember a show called Commander USA's Groovy Movies?
Oh, God.
If anybody remembers that, was my first professional writing job.
This was in the 80s?
In the late 80s, yeah. I was a kid. And it was my first job. It was the first time anybody ever paid me to write comedy.
What channel was this on?
USA.
It was on USA?
Yeah. Commander USA was a bad superhero knockoff. It was basically one of these cheapo shows. It was a guy with a painted-on mask and a bad superhero outfit. And it was one of those movie loft shows where you would show basically cheesy Roger Corman-type movies or the kind of stuff that Gilbert would feature on Up All Night.
Right.
It was my first gig.
So you were writing for this. Did you ever wear the costume?
I never wore the costume. I was a kid out of film school looking for a job, and they said, come and write these wraparounds for these bad movies. And I didn't meet Gilbert till years later. I met Gilbert working on a show called Caroline's Comedy Hour, which I don't know if anybody remembers that either.
That was during the time where every network had a comedy show.
Correct.
Like Comic Strip Live was on Fox, and Caroline's was what, A&E?
We were on A&E. There was Comic Strip Live. There was Evening at the Improv. Rosie hosted one called Stand Up Spotlight.
They
were cheap. Yeah, on VH1. They were cheap and easy to do and quick. And Gilbert came, I was a writer on the show, and Gilbert came on and played Robert Redford in an Indecent Proposal spoof in a tux. And I didn't see him again until years later, but I had an immediate affection for him. We never in a million years thought that, 15 years later, I'd be doing a podcast with him.
How did that come about, getting doing this show together?
I was writing on The View, and he came on. I was just writing jokes for Whoopi and Joy and doing what I do, which is write jokes for people. And Gilbert came on. He was sort of a recurring guest in bits on the show. And we kind of renewed our friendship a little bit, and we shared the same obsessions. Nobody else wanted to talk about Larry Hagman for an hour, or Jaime the Robot.
It wasn't even about Dallas.
No. Just obscure stuff. We just go off on tangents. And so he started calling me at home because he has this group of friends that will sit on the phone with him for hours. Just
he has
talking.
his own party line.
Yeah, he's got a little entourage of misfits like himself who will talk about Ted Bessel. Do you know who that is? I'm going way back. Obscure.
Lon Chaney Jr. I know that's one of Gilbert's friends.
A lot of that. Yeah, a lot of that. Obscure character actors, real grade Z horror movies that we love.
That's what's great about this thing, because when you're going through old Hollywood, you reference major names from the industry from the 20s all the way up to now, but it's always as a side note to talking about the sixth guy that played Curly in the Three Stooges.
Yeah, that's the fun of the show. And to answer your question, we just would sit on the phone till 2 a.m, just laughing and talking and trying to out-obscure each other. Remember this guy?
Right.
And his wife was just listening to these phone calls, and she said, "Why don't you guys do something with this? Why don't you do something productive?"
She works on the show too, right? She produces you guys?
His wife Dara, is sort of the brains behind the show. Yeah, she makes everything happen and does all the hard work and books the guests. And we said, "You want to do this?" And we went to Irwin Corey's house. You guys know who Professor Irwin Corey is?
No.
Look him up. He's 100 years old.
Okay.
We went to his house and interviewed him. And he's a comic from a million years ago. He's done everything. He's been around. And it wound up being an episode that we couldn't use. And then we kind of lost faith in the idea. And then I said, let's get somebody who's good at this. Let's get somebody who's an automatic. So we just called Dick Cavett and said, "Do you want to come over to Gilbert's apartment?"
He was one of your first, one of the first episodes you did.
The first one we did. Yeah, he was the first one we actually put out there. And he came over, and Dick is just, plug and play. And he started doing impressions of obscure Asian character actors from the 40s, which I doubt Dick Cavett has ever done anywhere.
Or could air on today's terrestrial radio.
Right. And we thought, this is something, and it just took off, and we wound up talking to him for an hour and a half, and that's all it is. We just, you guys know the Woody Allen movie, Broadway Danny Rose, where they sit in the diner, and they just talk about obscure show business and tell anecdotes. That's what we wanted it to be. We just wanted it to be, like you're eavesdropping on a bunch of comics in a diner.
Well, you've definitely you've captured an interesting sound and environment for what you guys are doing. There seems to be certain people that you have woven into every interview that you do, no matter who the guest is. We had mentioned the Three Stooges, but Groucho Marx seems to come up a lot. Now, I used to watch I found out, I think somebody on your show said that they found out about Groucho from his game show.
Yeah, You Bet Your Life.
And then realizing, he made movies too, and going back. And that's how I found him when I was a kid, when I saw reruns of the game shows.
Sure.
And Gilbert's really obsessed with Groucho. What is the obsession that everybody seems to have with this guy? Not just necessarily Gilbert, but anytime you bring it up to anybody you talk to, they all have a million stories about dealing with or seeing or having some kind of interaction with Groucho Marx.
Yeah, well, he's just an icon that I guess reached a lot of funny people that grew up in that era. I mean, the Marx Brothers haven't made a movie since the 40s.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know why he's somebody who comes up a lot. There are people, Milton Berle comes up a lot.
Well,
it's actually...
Gilbert wants to know about the size of his
he's
dick.
he's obsessed with Milty Schlong. Also, people will come up because it's a good excuse. Gilbert happens to do a great Groucho Marx, so it's an excuse to bring up people who he can then do an impression of. We just interviewed Dave Attell, actually, because we're trying to get some people under 80 on this show. And Gilbert was going back and forth from doing, he was doing Eric Roberts from the Pope of Greenwich Village. He was doing, it's just, that's the fun of it too.
You know who else does a good Eric Roberts?
Who's that?
Andrew Dice Clay.
He does.
He's been on the Opie and Anthony and Opie and Jimmy show many, many times. And he just does that one line that I can't remember for the life of me, but he just does
They
the
took
one
my
line.
thumb?
That's the one.
Charlie, they took my thumb?
It's the
Yeah.
same one I think Jay Moore does too.
Yeah,
Jay
Moore
that
does it
impression
too.
as well.
Jay Moore does it too. So we're working in some people that still have their original hips. We had Jeff Ross on the show. He's not an oldster.
No,
he's
and getting there, but
Dave,
he's not there yet.
And we're chasing some younger people. But the show's about showbiz history. So the older the guests, the more they've seen, the more anecdotes they have.
I want to talk about Jeff Ross and your involvement with the Friars and roasts and whatnot. But before we get to that, another thing I brought up on this show time to time, and I told it to the guys from Comic Book Men on the AMC show, was Gilbert tells this story about Cesar Romero. Did you ever find out if this story is true?
I don't know what you're talking about, Eric. I have no. He comes up with this stuff. He asked Adam West.
Yeah, I know. That's
and I was, I actually get embarrassed, which is there's no point in it. The story is Gilbert is convinced. See, I'm interested in the history of these people. He's interested in the tabloid history,
right?
So somewhere along the line, he picked up this story. I'm sitting here, Lisa's thinking, I have no idea who Cesar Romero is.
Cesar Romero.
Do you know Cesar Romero?
Listen, I'm older than I look.
Okay.
I'm actually 65.
He was actually a great Latin lover.
Right.
And was cast in these romantic parts years before he was the Joker on Batman.
Wouldn't shave that damn mustache.
The Adam West
Wouldn't
Batman.
shave the damn mustache.
Paint over that thing with the thick white paint.
That's right. That always bugged me. And now in the comic books, in the Batman 66 comic books, they've actually drawn him with the mustache under the grease paint.
And actually, in all I'm a toy guy, in all of the figures they've put out now of him, the mustache is there in the sculpt.
Amazing.
And they just white right over it.
He's also wearing a watch, a black wristwatch that he got from the president of Mexico. More trivia, as the Joker, if you go back and look. This is stuff no one needs to know.
No.
Anyway,
People here love Batman.
Gilbert somehow along the way picked up this story that must be apocryphal. Not to ruin it for our fans. That Cesar Romero, whose nickname was Butch, make of that what you will, according to Gilbert, used to pay young chorus boys to pull down his pants, I'm saying this on national radio, folks, and throw orange wedges at his naked ass. I hear this for the first time while we've got Adam West on the line. So there's no way for me to hit we don't have a cough button. I can't disconnect it. And Adam was on the phone, but I would have given anything to see the expression on his face. And then he was a sport about it. I thought he was going to, we're going to lose him. But he was a sport about it. He started working orange wedge jokes into the rest of the show.
The rest of the show. There was other interviews I heard him ask people, and they were correct. No, it was tangerines.
Right. People are starting to go. Frankie Avalon made a terrible movie. If you guys are into some of the worst movies ever made, if you're into bad cinema, look for a movie called Skidoo.
Oh, God.
And it's interesting because it was directed by Otto Preminger, who played Mr. Freeze on Batman. He played one of the Mr. Freezes. It's arguably the worst movie ever made. Cesar Romero's in it. Frank Gorshin's in it. Groucho's in it. Jackie Gleason takes acid in the film. It's got this all-star cast.
I'm sold.
It's the black mark on the resume. You're sold. The black mark on the resume of all these people who did great work. And again, Frankie Avalon worked with Cesar Romero for 2 days on this movie. So that's the first question out of Gilbert's mouth. And then the best thing is when they claim to have no knowledge of it, he'll wrap the show by saying, "We've been talking to Frankie Avalon, who confirmed that chorus boys." So he's obsessed, with weird minutia.
Well, going back to his obsession with the size of celebrity dicks.
That too. That's another one.
He spoke to Larry Scorch from F Troop.
Larry Storch, yeah.
About the other gentleman from F Troop.
Forrest Tucker, who is also rumored to have a really big dick. And thank God for serious radio that we can have this conversation.
And Gilbert tends to bring this up into other interviews as well. And if they won't answer that, then he goes back to Milton Berle. He's just got a series of questions that he'll constantly he'll cut people off, even though they're mid-thought, to throw it right back in just to see if they'll answer the question.
Well, we've now had two guests who saw Milty Schlong, Alan Zweibel and Jeff Ross. So he's getting his wish. He's getting the information he needs.
But are there photos anywhere?
There are no photos, but it was famous. You know the famous bet that he bet somebody else at the Friars Club, the story. And the two guys go into the men's room, and Uncle Milty comes out you know this. Michael knows where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
He says,
Matt,
what
Matt,
happened?
that's right.
And Burl says, I just took out enough to win. That's the story.
How did you get an association into the Friars Club? Because that's a difficult organization to get a part of unless somebody vouches for you, right?
Jeff Ross, years ago, when I was in L.A. for 10 years losing my mind, and I came back to New York, and I was starting my career over, and Jeff said, you should join the Friars. And so I needed a second. You needed two people, and my accountant happened to be a friar. It's not that exciting, Eric.
No? Because there's a big mystique around. It's almost like the Playboy Mansion, if you will, that there's this big mystique about the Friars Club, about what goes on there. And
It's the Illuminati.
Right.
I don't know about that.
Hang in the grotto.
The roasts from the Friars Club have now become, very mainstream. Comedy Central does them now.
Right. Well, they used to do them together.
Right.
Then
and now
parted
they
ways.
branched off on their own. But you were involved with which roast? The Trump roast?
I wrote for the Donald Trump roast, the Matt Lauer roast, the Don King roast, and then for Comedy Central, I did the Pam Anderson roast and the Roseanne roast.
Do you not like the direction that they're going with these roasts? Like the people they're
it's TV.
tributing to or honoring just is like they're doing Justin Bieber now. Like who gives a shit?
Because the network is saying you got to make these things younger. I think it's the same reason Kanye and Miley Cyrus are suddenly singing songs in the SNL 40th anniversary. They're trying to reach.
But
Are you trying to say they weren't a part of the history of Saturday
That's what I'm
Night
trying
Live?
to say. I know I'm going out on a crazy limb there.
It's a fair thing, I think.
I think that's the same thing. When the Friars and Comedy Central were partnered up for those roasts, there was constant conflict because the Friars wanted to put their veteran friars on the show.
And people who, in a way, earned that honor to be up there on the dais and have everybody shit-talking them.
And Comedy Central wanted Ben Stiller on the show and wanted, Janine Garofalo on the show. And so they would try to find somebody like Jerry Stiller to roast him, where you could get Ben Stiller and you could get Janine Garofalo, who was on the Ben Stiller show, and you could get younger. But they were constantly at odds. I think that's one of the reasons that they went their separate ways.
Because it just doesn't seem that they care anymore as far as who they're honoring, as long as it's a younger demographic.
The Friars still doesn't televise theirs. They do them on a Friday at the Hilton Hotel. It's a big bash. It's great, and it's very blue. And nobody ever sees them. I mean, they're taped for in-house purposes, but they never air anymore.
Yeah, well, Comedy Central is all about the audience. It's all about how many people are watching and how much can they sell the ad space for. So how many people are going to tune in for Bieber? Between the people who actually like him for some reason and all the people that hate him for some reason, that'll be actually probably very well received, at least, viewership-wise.
Right.
So, I mean, we may not like it, but from a business standpoint, I'm sure that it just makes sense.
Well, I feel it's like a hate roasting, whereas like roasting that used to be like camaraderie. Oh, you did this. Like we're gonna joke at you and make fun of you. Now it's just like fuck that guy.
There's a little of that.
Yeah.
You know about the infamous Chevy Chase roast?
I do.
Right. It was one of the most uncomfortable roasts of all time.
Yeah, which will never be shown by anybody. It's now a cult possession to have a copy of this thing because Comedy Central absolutely buried it.
It was just it wasn't just brutal for the sake of joking for comedy. It was going for blood and then trying to destroy this man's soul.
Oh.
And as it was like half an hour on TV, right?
No, it was an hour.
It was a full hour?
Yeah.
As the show was going on, you see with each act and each tribute that's popping up, him just kind of sulking a little bit more into it, like his head is going into his chest and he's not saying much. And then when he gets up there, he has a couple of lines. And he's like, "Thank you," and he's destroyed.
It wasn't
really
an
distraught.
affectionate Friars roast where it was like we only roast the ones we love. It was a different animal.
This guy's a dick. Let's embarrass him for an hour on national television.
Yeah. If you can find it, it's a cult collectible.
I shall seek it out.
Yeah,
definitely look for that.
Yeah.
I grew up time to time seeing pieces of the Dean Martin roasts, and then. About a year or two ago, the full collection came out, and I just got it this Christmas, and I've been watching them, and it's fascinating, seeing it's not even talent anymore, it's history of these daises of people up there, Groucho and Johnny Carson and Dean Martin, Sinatra on one of them, Don Rickles on almost all of them, and who's the guy who played the drunk?
Foster Brooks.
Foster Brooks up there all the time, and going through these things and comparing them to what you see now, and you're just like, it's completely lost. What they're doing now is going the way of let's just shit on who's the hot thing at the moment right now and call it a roast and get away with it, where this was they were shitting on their friend, but only these guys could say half the things that they were saying.
Yeah, there was shared history between the people, so you got a sense that you were kind of invited to this party of friends. Now I doubt very much the people that Anthony Jeselnik or whoever they're going to put on this thing knows Justin Bieber and has any relationship with Justin Bieber.
No, they're now just getting brutal and tested comics who can handle all this and say, like, this Justin Bieber thing is nobody's his friend. It's not going to be lighthearted by any means, and it's just going to shit on him and probably how Selena Gomez left him and how he thinks he's black, and this isn't a good step in his career, I don't think.
But as a joke writer, I still watch them and I still appreciate the art of them. I mean, the writing. Some of the guys writing those roasts are terrific writers, great joke writers.
Yeah, I mean,
so I can still appreciate them even if
I think some of the jokes are still funny, or a lot of the content is still funny. It just doesn't have the same feeling that the older ones have.
I agree.
Yeah, it's not like the same intention.
Yeah.
I don't know.
If we could switch gears a little bit and go a little deeper into your career here, go back into the 80s. What was your association with Garbage Pail Kids?
Good Lord, Eric. You're going back. My first.
I'm looking. So
What?
You're going to love this.
You know Garbage Pail Kids?
Of course.
Oh,
Who doesn't know
she's
Garbage
older. She
Pail
said
Kids?
she's older than she looks.
So Eric tells me, you're going to be on the show this week, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, that's awesome. So I start, looking up and checking some stuff out, and the first thing that really caught me. I mean, a bunch of stuff I knew already, but the Garbage Pail Kids thing completely blew me away. I was like, really? So, did you write card backs? Is that what it was?
And the fronts. Life of a Gag Writer, Michael.
I still have them all.
Do you?
Yes.
That's awesome.
People still send them to me in the mail to sign and send back.
Were you coming up with the names?
Sometimes, and I'd write the backs. The backs were always different. I also did a thing called Wacky Packs. Does anybody
I
remember
remember
those?
Wacky
Yes.
Packs.
I could still buy those.
Yeah, those have deeper roots. Garbage Pail Kids, I think, was an '80s thing,
Yeah.
and the Wacky Packs actually go back to the '60s.
Wasn't
I wrote
there a
them
movie
in the
too?
'90s.
Wasn't there a
Garbage Pail
Garbage Pail
Kids?
Kids
There
movie?
was an unwatchable GPK movie.
It was a
yes.
terrible
Yeah.
movie.
Did you have anything to do with that?
Nothing, sir. No, I was in LA
Don't
hanging by
lie,
my
we'll
thumbs
know.
by that point. Yeah, you will know. I went to art school. I went to the School of Visual Arts, and I was going to be a cartoonist. And
Can we take a moment to just mention how stylish Frank is? He's a stylish gentleman. We're sitting here in t-shirts.
Right.
Yeah, Eric's got a Time Lord shirt on. Lisa's got a Grumpy Cat shirt on.
facade?
And Matt has a Green Archer shirt.
Green Arrow Archer
And
matchup
Frank is
shirt.
wearing a nice suit and a beautiful wool
expensive
scarf.
shoes, nice socks.
Matching socks.
And yet I feel like I'm at home. I feel like I'm around. I feel like I'm with friends.
So did you get any real money from your time with the Garbage Pail Kids? Like, do you have any royalties?
No,
to anything?
those are called works for hire, which is a phrase you might be familiar with. I was an art school student, and I was studying with people who did this kind of thing. There was a guy named Art Spiegelman. You guys would know that name if you're fans of graphic novels.
Yep.
And when he wasn't winning a Pulitzer for creating Mouse, he was the co-creator of Garbage Pail Kids, which I don't know how many people Art wants to know about that, but there it is. It's out there. And they would give you $100 a day to come to Tops, which was in a little old factory in Red Hook, Brooklyn, that was lost in time. You'd go there, you'd get lunch for a day, a scoop of potato salad on a tray. I'm sure there was asbestos everywhere. And you'd go and you'd get $100 a day to be a gag man, to write. I used to write Bazooka Joe gags.
Oh, wow.
That was next on my list here.
I was
with the bazooka.
24. I was in college. And
That's my dream job.
I just left college.
How do you get that job? Like, it's not a matter of doing it. It's like, how do you even know to apply to that?
I didn't. A guy named Mark Newgarden, who's a cartoonist, and Drew Friedman, whose work you guys must know. I would assume
Friedman,
if you don't, get into it because it's great stuff. I'm looking at Piscopo playing Sinatra up here on the TV, and it's weirding me out.
I got Piscopo on my screen in front of me.
It's weirding me out.
Piscopo here.
But
it's haunting us.
Drew is a very well-known cartoonist. We had him as a guest on the podcast, and he was drawing these things. And a lot of the cartoonists that were knocking around SVA at the time told me you should go to Tops and you should ask about this, and they'll give you $100 for the day, which was money then.
Yeah, sure.
When you're, I was a student to write these things, and I would go there and they would just throw stuff at me, whatever they had in development, and I would sit in on some very, very strange meetings because the grossology books were big. Then gross out stuff was big for kids, and GPK had been such a monster for Tops that they kept trying to capitalize on it. Capitalize or to repeat something. And they would have these meetings with these old men who'd been at Tops since the 50s, sitting around saying, "What do we do? Well, how do we capture that garbage pail audience?"
What's the follow-up to Glandular Angela?
And they had candy. They had meetings I used to sit in on, candy development meetings, where they would say, "What about earwax? Kids will go for that." They would try to come up with gross out stuff, but there were no kids in this meeting. It was 60-year-old men trying to figure out what kids would buy. And I remember sitting in on meetings, and somebody said, "What if we took a toy like a figure and we put the belly button lint was cotton candy?" Would they go for that? And these were the development meetings that I used to sit in at times.
Let's talk about dingleberries.
Well, they came out with a thing called Pick and Choose, which was a nose, and you could look this up. I don't even know if it's online. And the candy was green,
like
boogers.
Yeah.
I had that.
And then there was a thing called the Barfo family, which was vomit, which was candy vomit. And I kid you not. And
it was gummy, wasn't it? Right? And it was chunky. And I kind of remember that.
It was a head. It was a toy plastic head, a molded head of a family. There was a father, the Barfo family. I'll send you guys a picture. I have one at home. And there was a plunger, and it was gelatin candy. And if you push the plunger on the bottom, the vomit candy, the gelatin, would come out of the mouth. Oh. And they marketed this. And that's
nice.
I mean, these guys aren't wrong. This is gold.
It was gold. And that was my
Where was
my
this
job.
sold? Were regular toy stores selling this?
You could get. I don't know if the Barfo family was something that ever really made it past like the development stage. I don't know if it actually got to stores, but I have a box at home.
Do you have? I was going to say, does somebody have like hundreds of them, like when people used to collect Cabbage Patch Kids, thinking they're going to, this is going to be my retirement plan. They bought thousands of them, and now they're worth nothing.
Recent years of GPK sites have sprung up, and I was saying people send me the stuff to sign. And
they're coming back. There's new cards coming out this year. Funko, which is a toy company we talk about all the time, has a great license of toys coming out this year. So GPK is still pretty hot. But I remember growing up in my town, there was a local pharmacy. It wasn't CVS or Rite Aid. It was, Marlboro Pharmacy or whatever, a little mom and pop pharmacy. And they had all of that garbage candy. Uh-huh. It was great. It was fantastic.
Garbage candy.
It was terrible candy, like Archie comic books, like GPK cards. It was great. And baseball cards. I mean,
you can find it. Look for Pick and Choose and all that stuff. I mean, and I would write card series that would go into development and that would never see the light of day. We did a thing called Wretched Wrestlers, which was GPK as wrestlers. Then we did a weird. What did we do? We had like Weird Wheels, which was like bikers as wrestlers. It was just kind of like the most gross out stuff. That was the thing that they were trying to market, and I was a gag writer trying to make them clever.
Right.
So they're just trying to say, add more throw up to it.
There was a lot of that. I did some GPKs and wacky packs that I'm actually proud of. They're framed in my apartment.
So what are the GPK cards that you're most proud of?
Oh God, I don't remember. There was a bungee. This is embarrassing to talk about. But
I remember there was one where there was some kid like peeking through a sewer. Like
peeking through a sewer?
Yeah, like it was almost like Pennywise, but the kid was just living in a sewer, whatever the name was, and he's just looking through the sewer. It's like, oh.
I remember Atom Bomb, of course.
Right.
Glandular Angela was one.
Brainy Brian with like
Brainy Brian, right. Yeah,
I came in on the tail end of GPK, so I did a lot of other stuff. I did stuff that you're never going to see. I did gruesome greeting cards.
Okay.
I did a thing for them years later. They called me. I was living in L.A. and they asked me to write a thing called Hollywood Zombies, which I don't think sold very well, but they were celebrity zombie cards.
Oh my God, I have those too.
You have them?
I do.
I wrote every one of those things in about a 3-day weekend. I wrote 80 cards.
Somebody wants a picture.
Yeah. I mean, this is the life of a gag writer. You know that you go where the job is. Somebody says, "Hey, you want to write some funny shit? Here's some money."
The zombie card stuff. Great concept, wrong time period. Because if you did it now, it would probably sell through the roof.
Yeah, well, this was maybe 10 years ago. I'm trying to remember.
Still, yeah, even then, the zombie stuff wasn't hot yet.
It was before the zombie renaissance.
Certainly before Walking Dead, before the explosion of zombies. Yeah, I think they were too far ahead on that one. But I did license stuff. Tops would license, we did New Kids on the Block cards. Yep. I did Nicktoons where I wrote Rugrats and Ren and Stimpy cards. I wrote... God, I did Desert Storm cards. Those weren't funny. But anything they put in front of me, it was like, well, punch this up, do this, write a gag, come up with something here. And
now, were you paid per job, per card,
per day? You'd go in and get $100 for the day. And the other thing is, I was a baseball fan, and none of the other guys that were writing these things knew anything about sports. So I was the guy that would tell you which team. I had to proofread and copy at the backs of the baseball cards. I would say, no, this guy got traded to the Cubs. And that was also...
Well, this is the only photo we have permission to use.
It was a weird time in my life. I thought if I ever wrote a sitcom pilot, I would write about this bubblegum card factory that was kind of lost in time.
What was the workaround for Garbage Pail Kids not getting sued by Cabbage Patch Kids?
I don't know what happened with that because it preceded me. I remember when we did Wacky Packs, we were constantly getting cease and desist letters. None of these companies had a sense of humor and wanted you to spoof their products.
Right.
And because it wasn't a periodical, you're not covered by the same parody laws.
I was just going to ask, is the parody law kick in or no?
You're not protected the way Mad is protected or National Lampoon or something like that because trading cards are different. So if the lawyers yelled loud enough, they would just drop the product. I did a thing called The Little Barmaid, which was a spoof of The Little Mermaid. And it was Ariel getting hit on at a bar. But, Sebastian the Crab was wasted and grabbing her ass. And Disney's the most litigious company on the planet.
Right.
And that did not fly. So a lot of stuff would just die because they'd flinch when they'd get a letter from a lawyer. And they got a lot of them.
Who was Cabbage Patch Kids? I don't remember what company had the rights. Was that Mattel at the time? I
think it might have been Mattel.
I wonder if they almost saw it as, well, it brought spotlight to, or it was the flip side of their product. Some companies just it's not worth their effort.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily hurting their product.
They made a mint. Topps made a mint, but Mark and Art, who created them, were doing a work for hire. So the creators didn't get rich.
How many of these do you still have?
The cards?
Yeah.
I've got sets of them. I've got boxes of them. I've also got original art.
You really should think about doing a con appearance, especially New York Comic Con in October. Because if you did your podcast there...
Yeah, you and I talked about that. That's actually a good idea.
Do your podcast there, but you can also go under, with a banner just saying original writer or whatever, Garbage Pail Kids. You have all these old ones. You could make a fortune selling these things.
This is what it's come to. I'm going to be sitting in a booth at the Comic-Con signing Garbage Pail Kids
come
for
full circle
$10.
Now, because all the stuff that you had that was popular then kind of went away.
Yeah.
And it was very, very faint interest in that particular product. And then there was a resurgence again. Now's the time to hit, while it's hot. You should definitely look into New York Comic Con this year.
It is a thought. Well, we tried to do an episode from the Comic Con last year. It didn't happen. But we'll try to do that again this year. And Gilbert's doing the Chiller Fest too. He's doing.
Oh, nice!
He gets a table and he sits down and he signs. That's how we got Sarah. He met Sarah Karloff. Right. We had her on the show.
And you like old actors, so you've got Lou Ferrigno and Ernie Hudson there, so you can just go for them. That's
how can I go wrong? Do you know what I read about Ernie Hudson? You guys could
that he's not in the new Ghostbusters.
You guys could verify this. That he was not. That he auditioned to play his character in the animated Ghostbusters and was beaten out
by Arsenio Hall.
Is that true?
Oh, no.
That's the rumor.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yes. Is that the most depressing thing you've ever heard of in show business?
You're not good enough to be you.
You're not good enough to be you.
It's puzzling because it's not like Ernie Hudson comes with a high price, price tag on his head.
Maybe
there.
at the time he wanted too much.
Think so? Oh yeah, it was the 80s.
Yeah, it could be.
That Proton Pack money was big back then.
I don't think Arsenio came cheap, but but he lost the part.
Arsenio wasn't Arsenio yet. He was still Eddie's buddy and doing Coming to America and Harlem Nights.
I wonder if it was just a matter of they just didn't want any of the originals. They just wanted to distance themselves a little bit from it.
Maybe Ernie Hudson also sucked at voiceover.
That could be it too.
That could be too.
That's a possibility.
They did try. I know when they launched the real Ghostbusters, as it was called back then, they did try getting Bill Murray to redo it.
Sure.
And Bill turned it down, and I think after that, everybody else kind of walked away from it as well.
Bill doesn't do it. Why bother?
He would do it now.
Would he do it now, you think?
He's playing kickball out in Roosevelt Island, I'm sure he'll go and voice a cartoon.
I love his story about why he did Garfield, because he thought it was Joel Cohen of the Coen brothers.
Yeah.
You heard this story?
Yes.
I heard that. It was Cohen.
And he read the wrong.
Yes.
So he said yes to the wrong project.
I wrote cartoons like that show too. After GPK happened, I went to LA and I wrote many cartoons that were not as good as the real Ghostbusters.
What did you write?
I wrote a show called Cat Dog for Nickelodeon.
Yes.
You guys know this
All
show?
Alone in the World, the little cat dog.
And I wrote a show called Angry Beavers.
Yep.
For
Two
Nick.
Angry Beavers.
And I wrote a lot of stuff to pay the bills, man. I wrote Hercules. I wrote Casper. I wrote a show for Spielberg called Toonsylvania.
I remember that. That didn't
Which
last
was
too long.
Wayne Knight played a hunchback, and I did that. And the fun was going to the voiceover sessions and meeting the actors.
The Two Angry Beavers was a huge show.
And Cat Dog did pretty well, too.
Yeah. Those were Cartoon Network shows, right?
That was on Nick.
Nickelodeon.
Yeah, I think they were both Nick. Yeah. They might rerun on Cartoon Network.
I had it wrong then.
And two of the guys that wrote on Angry Beavers with me went on to write Bad Santa. Glenn and John.
That's a great movie.
Yeah.
What are you working on now? I know at one point you told me that you were doing. Can I mention who you were working with?
You can mention anything you like.
Louis Black.
You've already brought up my my ancient history that I've tried to bury.
Louis Black and Sarah Silverman. You were recently working with them on some projects.
That is taping tomorrow for Access TV. I wrote a bit for Wanda Sykes and a little bit for Sarah for Lewis's show, which is called Let Freedom Laugh. It's a comedy. It's a fundraiser for the First Amendment. Not for the First Amendment, the Bill of Rights. I'll get it.
That's a good fundraiser.
That's a good plug, huh?
Yeah.
It's a tidy plug.
Something. Look for it. After it airs, let me know.
Let Freedom Laugh. It's Louis Black, Sarah Silverman, Wanda Sykes, Tommy Smothers from the Smothers Brothers, a great African-American comedian named Dick Gregory, who's a legendary comic. And it's a fundraiser to build monuments for the Bill of Rights.
I also heard you're going to be doing another live. You already did one so far for the Amazing Colossal podcast. You're doing another live event at Caroline's.
We're going to have Louis, I hope, Louis Black on April 19th, tentatively. We're waiting for a confirmation. But
at Caroline's Comedy Club on Broadway here in New York City.
Yes, and we also just booked Steve Buscemi to be on the podcast, which I'm thrilled about. And we're trying to mix it up, not just have the ancient guests.
But some of those stories are great. When the Desi Arnaz stories about his straying away from Lucy during their marriage and what have you.
Yeah, who told that? Was it Robert Osborne?
I think so. Yeah,
he was trained at Desi Lou. He was like a Lucy protege,
right?
Yeah, which people don't. We love that about the show too, is that we bring out people's secret pasts. People know him as the TCM host, and they didn't know that he was an actor. He was in the Beverly Hillbillies pilot.
And then got cut out from the rest of the show.
He just realized he wasn't going to be an actor and that he had to do something else, So, what's interesting about the podcast? No matter how obscure the guest is, they've got history, they've got stories.
Sure.
Even if you never heard of this person, it doesn't matter because they've witnessed stuff, and a person who isn't necessarily a household name still has collected anecdotes and stories over the years, like James Caron.
One last thing with the podcast that is another theme that seems to pop up now and then. Now, when the first time you guys brought this up, Gilbert explained the story.
Yeah.
And then every time since then, all you had to do was say the person's name.
I know where you're going with this,
and
Eric.
everyone just started laughing. You didn't even have to explain it.
I said to my wife as I was leaving the house, I said, I don't know how much research Eric has done. What are the chances that he brings up to Danny Thomas on the coffee
That
table?
is the one.
And you did not disappoint, sir.
The story that was told on their podcast was that Danny Thomas, very famous comic actor, had a show called Make Room for Daddy, which was huge and a staple for when Nick at Night launched.
Sure,
it was one of their main shows that they would rerun all the time. He also founded the St. Jude's Children's Hospital. That aside,
thanks for getting that disclaimer in there.
I was going to say,
there's some stories that Danny was a bit.
This involved tangerines. I need to know.
It was worse. Danny,
bruising.
This has been great, Eric. I got to run.
Was a bit of a partier, and allegedly there's stories that he used to enjoy the company of women while sitting under a glass table.
Oh, okay.
think that's the right way to put it.
You can use your imagination.
Yes.
Wait, who's sitting under the glass table? I'm trying to envision this.
Well, allegedly
was Danny Thomas.
And you should throw the word allegedly in there as much as possible.
It is allegedly because
friend.
it was on your podcast.
Yes.
So
it's come up.
This is the
a big
story.
table, so big enough that you can sit under and
look up.
Wowee.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you could imagine
all the
certain
kids are doing
activities
it.
going from there.
Oh, yeah.
The same has also been alleged to a very famous rock and roller, if you will, maybe considered the father of modern rock and roll. He was also associated to this kind of activity.
Mr. Presley, are we talking about?
No, Mr. Berry.
Wasn't Stallone?
Oh, well, he was into a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But there's video evidence of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Why are we being so careful like they're listening?
Because you never know who's still alive.
Oh, Lord.
Just come out with it.
Wasn't Stallone into that too? I heard.
I think
allegedly.
at one point, too.
I'm sure.
Allegedly.
You know, this is the thing about show business, though. You can't prove any of this stuff, except for Chuck Berry. I don't want to,
Right.
Blow up his spot.
God bless Chuck Berry. But there's video evidence of that. There was a VHS tape circulating for years.
Oh, my goodness.
About Chuck Berry.
It was Chuck Berry's tape and Faces of Death back to back.
Yeah, that was funny. Good reference. The Danny Thomas thing is pure showbiz urban legend. Right. And it can't be proven. And the people that worked with him, it's because it's just become legend.
And it's not so much the exact story anymore. It's just when it's brought up, you just say the name and there's a pause, and the person on the other line either makes a big sigh or starts laughing because everybody seems to know this alleged story.
It's like the Aristocrats. I mean, it's the thing that kind of links funny people over the years. And so if you say you know the story, or yes, you believe the story, or somebody told you the story is true, that's like your membership card. You get a certain kind of legitimacy. So we ask people about it. Oh yeah, that definitely happened. People that work with him, nobody knows, nobody saw this. It's not in Marlowe's book.
Still trying to picture what was happening on the table.
Well,
it's just small talk.
Tea party.
I mean, is this before copy machines were invented and it was just like, hey, look at my butt?
It became comedy legend. A writer from The Daily Show, I'm not going to mention her name, sent me a Christmas card, and her dog had fallen asleep under a glass top coffee table. And she took a picture, and that became her Christmas card, and it said, "Merry Christmas from me, Buddy, and Danny Thomas." If she's listening, she knows who she is. But it's what they say, don't let the truth get in the way of a great story. It's a great story, and it's a great myth, whether it happened or not.
Doesn't matter at this point.
It doesn't matter, except maybe to Danny's family. So when Gilbert does it, as he does a lot, I keep throwing in allegedly because we really can't afford lawyer attorneys.
I mean, St. Jude's is great.
Please donate.
Please donate. It's actually a very good cause.
It is a very good cause.
We're running out of time here. I just want to take a call. Will in Nebraska is a fan of some of Mr. Santopadre's work.
Oh, good heavens.
Will, hello.
Dude, what's up, guys?
Hi.
How's it going?
Yo.
I'm doing awesome. You totally downplayed your shows, by the way. Your shows were the two greatest cartoons on at the time.
The two Nick shows?
Yeah, dude.
Oh, you're too kind, Will. Thank you.
Angry Beavers and Cat Dog. What in the name of Davy Crockett sweat-stained buckskins is going on around?
That's a reference. God bless you, sir. It was just a job at the time. You don't know that these things are ever going to have a cult life. It's just, hey, my agent calls and says, "Do you want to do this?" And it's quick buck. And I like the guys that were doing it. I like the Angry Beavers was created by a very funny guy named Mitch Schauer, who's very clever and has done a lot of wonderful work in TV. And I wanted to work with those guys, so I did it. I never thought these things, like GPK, and I never thought any of that stuff was going to become a cult. But thank you, Will.
All right. Just another reason why you need to do the Comic-Con, because if you do some printouts of Cat Dog and Two Angry Beavers, you can sign that there as well.
You're like really pushing this.
I really think he should do this.
All right.
And I'm hoping to get a cut. So, of course you are, you should definitely do this.
All right, Eric.
Mr. Santopadre.
I'm going to look into this.
Submit it as a panel. You can be the moderator.
Oh, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Do you think enough people are into wacky packs and garbage pail kids and these nicknames?
Yes.
We need a custom Eric garbage pail kid.
Really?
Especially because a lot of that
There is
stuff,
one.
like Wacky Packs, I think is back also.
Oh, yeah?
GPK is coming back.
Yeah.
And then those old cartoons. There's such a huge following for those old cartoons.
Right. And what if Topps tells me, gee, we don't really feel... We're not really happy with the idea of you sitting there and doing this.
I don't know, because I think Topps is the ones that still puts a lot of that stuff out, so Topps probably be okay with it.
Let me put it this way. I don't think WWE really is happy that Virgil is at every event with their belt saying that he was the $1 million champion.
With Ted DiBiase's name spelled wrong.
Yeah, Ted DiBiase will be here, and he's never at the convention. It's just Virgil all the time.
Aw.
So I think you got a good thing here. You should definitely look into it.
Okay. From your lips to...
And you listening should download the Amazing Colossal podcast with Gilbert Gottfried and Frank Santopadre. A lot of great stories about old Hollywood, and some younger guests, as he said, are coming up.
We're trying. Well, we're talking to Billy Mooney from who played Will Robinson on Lost in Space. Not
Fish Heads too, right?
Fish and wrote Fish Heads. Dr. Demento. Look at you. You know your onions, man. You know
it's all useless nonsense that never got me laid for many years.
Can I tell them where they can find the Amazing Colossal podcast?
Please.
It's on gilbertgottfried.com, and it's on SoundCloud, and it's on iTunes. And
definitely subscribe.
Subscribe. Please tweet. Please write us. Please contact us. We love our listeners.
And Lisa, do you have any dates or anything to plug?
I have, sure. I'm doing a show in Brooklyn this Sunday at the New York Loft Hostel at 7 p.m. And Wednesday, I'm in Astoria at the Beer Garden, 8 o'clock.
Ooh, nice.
Matt, anything for you?
Yeah, always you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, GeekStuffOG, and of course check out the Geek Stuff podcast, bkgeekstuff.com for more geeky chatter, toys,
While
and
you're looking
comics
for
and
the
whatnot.
Amazing Colossal podcast to subscribe on iTunes, also go over to Geek Stuff and download that as well.
Please do.
And Giddles?
I have a meatball cook-off this Sunday. For
Nice.
people on the radio land.
I like this guy.
And it's Sunday. If everyone wants to come out, 12 to 2 at the Royal Palm Shuffleboard Club. There's going to be a yacht rock band afterwards. You could hear some Steve Winwood. You could be back in the high life again. So that's this Sunday.
I'll be signing Barfo family boxes in the parking lot. If anybody...
Yes.
At least you get to eat for free.
Yeah.
One other thing we didn't get to as we end the show here.
Oh, yeah.
And I forgot to ask you about Red Nose Day coming to the United States.
About what's that?
Red Nose Day? They do over in Comic Relief does over in the UK.
I'm not as familiar with this as I should be.
Oh, it's going to take too long,
Okay.
so we'll have to skip that.
Next episode.
Next episode. But we did have an announcement that we didn't get to, and the announcement is starting next Friday here on the Opie Radio channel, the program now goes to 2 hours. Thank you to everybody who's been writing and harassing Opie and just calling and all your well wishes and whatnot. So, yes, they finally are now putting us at 2 hours. Starting next week, we will be on at 7 p.m. on the East Coast, and that's 4 p.m. on the West Coast. Thank you, Opie, to Don Wickland and everybody else here at SiriusXM for allowing that to happen. So it's a nice early birthday gift for myself.
Yay!
Oh, happy birthday, by the way.
It's
Just
on
saw
Monday.
that on Facebook.
How? I didn't post it.
It said your birthday's in 3 days.
Oh, goddamn Facebook. Sneaking into my business. But yes, on Monday is my birthday there. So, yes, next week, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. on the Pacific side. It's Erik Nagel, 2 hours. We will be here with special guests, Zachary Quinto.
That's right.
Wow.
And Jason Isaacs.
Nice.
You may know him as
Lucius Malfoy
from the Harry Potter movies,
Yes.
but he's in. He's going to be promoting Dig, which is debuting on USA, which is awesome. And Zachary Quinto, young Spock from Star Trek and Heroes and American Horror Story, but he's going to be in. I think we're talking about The Slap.
The Slap, right?
On NBC.
I'm sorry, Gilbert just appeared on the TV screen and I got distracted in an Apprentice promo.
You know how hard it is not to say your name as Gilbert? Because
Go
you just
for it.
want to. I can't do
Go
it.
for
It
it,
sounds
buddy.
horrible when you go, Frank Santopadre.
Next time, if you invite me back, I'll come back with Gilbert.
I would love to. I know Fridays is difficult for a comic because they're always doing stuff or traveling. But
we'll find a weekend he's around.
yeah, send our love over to Gilbert. Been a big fan of his for many, many years, and I would love to talk to him if he has a chance.
I will.
I think that's it.
Thanks for having me.
Erock Radio on Instagram and Twitter. The YouTube channel is up and running.
Right.
It's Erik Nagel on YouTube, has all our interviews, and it's still updating. Comic Book Men and a whole bunch of other stuff is up there as well, so you can check all that out. And we didn't give away the games. We'll do that again next week with a lot more stuff to give away. Thank you, everybody. Until next time, be seeing you.
My work is done here.
What do you mean your work is done? You didn't do anything.
Didn't I?
And that's all the time we have. Follow the guys on Twitter and Instagram at eRock Radio and at Geek Stuff OG. eRock Radio and at Geek Stuff OG. The show should be back next week, right here on OP Radio.